All right, today we're going to talk about the single most important biochemical process on our entire planet. No, seriously, the most important. It's the one thing that makes our world a living, breathing place. Of course, I'm talking about photosynthesis.
And listen, when I say it's the most important, that is zero exaggeration. I mean, think about it. This one single process, it's responsible for the food on your plate, the oxygen in your lungs, and yep, even the fossil fuels that have powered our entire civilization. It is literally the foundation of, well, everything.
Now, I know what you're thinking. We all got the basics in biology class, right? Sunlight plus water plus CO2 equals life. But how? How does a plant actually grab a photon of light, something that has no mass, and turn it into, a leaf, an apple? Let's really get into it.
Okay, to really wrap your head around the sheer scale of this, get this. Every single year, photosynthesis yanks about 200 billion tons of carbon dioxide out of the air. It just pulls it down and locks it into organic stuff. That's not just a big number. That is the engine of the entire global carbon cycle.
And the byproduct of all that heavy lifting? Oh, just about 140 billion tons of oxygen. The stuff we breathe. This process literally terraformed our planet and made complex life, you, me, all of it, even possible.
So, those numbers are just staggering. Let's use them to zoom out for a second and look at the big picture. This isn't just some neat trick plants do. Photosynthesis is the fundamental energy deposit into Earth's bank account. It's the starting point for pretty much every ecosystem out there.
What it really boils down to is energy conversion. It's taking this free, totally abundant energy beaming down from the sun and bottling it up, storing it in the chemical bonds of sugar molecules. And those little sugar molecules, they are the bottom floor, the absolute foundation of practically every food chain.
Okay, so this is where it gets really cool. We know what it does, but where does this magic happen? To find out, we've got to zoom in. And I mean way in. We're going from a planetary view all the way down into a tiny little factory inside a single cell. So we start with a whole plant, right? Then we dive into one of its leaves. Inside that leaf, we find one of the hundreds of cells packed in there. And inside that cell, that's where we find them. These little green blobs, maybe 100 of them in a single cell, called chloroplasts. This, right here, is the factory floor.
And this little chloroplast, it's like a perfectly designed microfactory. It's got two main departments. You've got the thylakoids, these stacks of membranes that are like the solar panels, capturing all the sunlight. Then you have the stroma, which is this fluid-filled space all around them. That's the assembly line, where the sugar actually gets built. And here's the key. One can't work without the other. They're totally codependent.
All right, let's break it down. Act 1, the light-dependent reactions. The name says it all, right? This whole phase is about one thing, capturing that solar energy and turning it into something the cell can actually use. It's basically charging up the factory's batteries.
So here's the simple input-output. What goes in? Light and water. That's it. What comes out? Well, you get oxygen, which, funnily enough, is just a waste product for the plant, but you also get these two super important energy molecules, ATP and NADPH. Just think of them as tiny rechargeable batteries. And right now, they are fully charged and humming with energy, ready to go.
Okay, but how? I mean, how does a particle of light do that? The answer is just, it's an elegant, mind-bogglingly complex molecular machine. A tiny little assembly line built right into those thylakoid membranes.
It really is like a microscopic Rube Goldberg machine. It kicks off when light hits a protein complex, and that energy does something amazing. It splits a water molecule. Bam! That releases the oxygen we breathe, but it also frees up these high-energy electrons. These electrons get passed down a chain, creating a tiny electrical current. That current powers a pump that crams protons onto one side of a membrane, building up pressure. Then, after another little jolt of light energy, those protons are allowed to flood back through this incredible molecular motor that spins like a tiny turbine, cranking out our ATP battery packs. It's genius.
Okay, let's take a breath. It's a lot, I know. So let's recap the two acts. Act 1, the photo part, as in light, that all happens in the thylakoid. Its whole job is to use light to make those ATP and NADPH batteries. Now we're ready for Act 2, the synthesis part, as in making something. This happens out in the stroma, and it's where we finally cash in all that stored energy.
And that brings us to the Calvin cycle. This is the main assembly line. All that beautiful energy we just captured is about to be put to work doing the real job, taking plain old carbon dioxide out of the air and building a sugar molecule.
And this whole operation hinges on one key player, a heroic but, let's say, slightly flawed enzyme. Its name is Rubisco. And this thing is so important, and there's so much of it that it's arguably the single most abundant protein on planet Earth. Think about that.
So what's Rubisco's job? Its job is called carbon fixation, and it does exactly what it sounds like. It reaches out, grabs a CO2 molecule right out of the air, and stitches it onto another molecule. This is it. This is the magic moment that inorganic carbon from the atmosphere officially becomes part of the living world.
After Rubisco works its magic, the cycle keeps spinning through two more phases. First, in reduction, those charged up batteries, ATP and NADPH, are spent. They provide the energy to turn the new molecule into a simple 3-carbon sugar. Then, in regeneration, even more energy is used to rebuild the starting molecule so the whole cycle can go again. And get this for efficiency, for every 6 of these sugars that are made, only 1 gets to leave as the final product. The other 5 have to be recycled to keep the line running.
But, and this is a big but, here's the plot twist. As amazing as this whole system is, it's not perfect. Our hero, Rubisco, has a pretty big flaw. It's got a serious case of mistaken identity that causes the plant to waste a ton of energy.
See, sometimes Rubisco gets confused. Instead of grabbing a CO2 molecule, it accidentally grabs an oxygen molecule. And when that happens, it triggers this totally wasteful process called photorespiration. It creates a toxic byproduct, and the plant has to spend precious energy just to clean up the mess. This is not a small deal either. This mistake can slash the efficiency of major food crops by more than 25%. That's why engineering a smarter Rubisco is one of the holy grails for scientists trying to improve crop yields.
But hey, evolution is pretty clever. Some plants have figured out amazing workarounds for Rubisco's little problem. You've got plants like corn and sugarcane. They use something called C4 photosynthesis. They basically have this extra step where they concentrate CO2 in these deep internal cells, and then they force feed it to Rubisco. It's a high CO2 bubble where oxygen can't get in to cause trouble. Then you have succulents, like cacti. They use a strategy called CAM. To save water, they only open their pores at night, grabbing all the CO2 they can and storing it as an acid. Then during the hot, sunny day, they seal up tight and use that stored CO2 to do their thing. So clever.
I mean, these are just brilliant molecular solutions, right? They show how life adapts at the tiniest scales. And that really brings us full circle. It's time to zoom back out and see how this microscopic drama connects to the massive cycles that run our entire planet.
So if you look at the global carbon cycle, you basically see these two giant opposing forces, photosynthesis and respiration. For ages, they were in a beautiful, delicate balance. Photosynthesis pulls carbon out of the air, respiration, that's us breathing, puts it back in. But you can see the problem here. The burning of fossil fuels, which, remember, is just the energy from millions of years of ancient photosynthesis, is now pumping a huge extra load of CO2 into the atmosphere, and it's throwing that whole balance way off. And that kind of leaves us with one last big thought. This process, photosynthesis, showed up billions of years ago, and ever since, it has been the fundamental engine of life on Earth, turning pure sunlight into the energy that powers, well, everything. So as we face the challenges of our time, the big question really is, what else can we learn from this brilliant, ancient, and incredibly successful process to power our own future?